The United Nations General Assembly votes overwhelmingly in favor of a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza.
Poland's new Prime Minister Donald Tusk and his cabinet have been sworn in, ending 8 years of populist rule.
The EU institutions reach a political agreement on regulating and improving the working conditions of platform workers.
The United Nations General Assembly voted overwhelmingly on Tuesday evening to demand a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. The 193-member world body was 153 in favour, 10 against, with 23 abstentions. Unlike Security Council resolutions, which last week saw the US veto a bid to back a Gaza ceasefire, General Assembly votes are not binding, but are an important barometer of world opinion. The vote also shows the growing isolation of the US and Israel. Earlier, US President Joe Biden hosted a Hanukkah reception at the White House, telling guests Washington will continue to provide military assistance to Israel until Hamas is gone. But in his harshest criticism of Israel, he warned it was losing support around the world due to its indiscriminate bombing of Gaza. And he suggested Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu change his far-right coalition government, which is largely opposed to the creation of a Palestinian state. Meanwhile, Israel has continued its bombardment of Gaza, with the main focus on Khan Yunis in the south. There's also been fighting in Rafah near the Egyptian border. The World Health Organization says the health system in Gaza has gone from 36 hospitals to only 11 since Israel launched its bombing mission. The Hamas-run health ministry in the enclave says Israel has killed more than 18,000 people. Israel began its strikes after Hamas fighters launched a cross-border attack, killing 1,200 people and taking 240 hostages, some of whom have since been released.
Hearing no objection, it is so decided.
Enthusiastic applause and a standing ovation as a landmark deal is agreed on at the end of the United Nations Climate Summit in Dubai. While it doesn't specifically mention a phase-out of fossil fuels, something more than 100 nations had wanted, it does call for parties to contribute to efforts to transition away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a way that will achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. President of the conference, Sultan Al Jaber, said delegates had worked hard to secure a better future for people and the planet.
While the COP28 final text has been hailed as a workable compromise, many at the climate summit have highlighted its shortcomings, particularly in relation to the language surrounding the move away from fossil fuels.
Clearly, many people here would have liked clearer language about the need to begin peaking and reducing fossil fuels in this critical decade. But we know this was a compromise between many parties.
Small island nations who are among the most affected by climate change made clear their disappointment.
We have come to the conclusion that the course correction that is needed has not been secured. We have made an incremental advancements over business as usual, when what we really needed is an exponential step change in our actions and support. We saw also that there were...
Germany's foreign minister sympathised with the island's concerns, but says for the EU, the COP28 deal was just the starting point. More than 100 nations had pleaded for the phasing out of fossil fuels to be explicitly mentioned in the text. Their disappointment was shared by climate activists, who had staged a vigil throughout the conference in the UAE.
Another sleepless night under attack for residents of Kyiv. At least 53 people were injured, 6 of them children, in what was Russia's second missile assault on the Ukrainian capital this week. Loud explosions could be heard as the city's air defences were activated. Ukraine's army says it downed all the ballistic missiles, but that debris blew a large crater in the ground, destroyed cars and damaged the homes of distraught people.
Хай почує мене той Путін, ті Медведєви, те правительство в Росії, що вони творять, що в них з мозгами, що в них з головами, чи там хоч одна ізвилина є. щоб сьогодні 21 вік і наробити такого горя, і кидати ракети на українців. Це ж братня країна була, це ж сусідня країна, братня була.
The Red Cross is taking care of people forced to leave their homes in a building that was on fire. Officials say the windows of a children's hospital were shattered and that falling debris also damaged the city's water supply system. More than 100 homes were also left without electricity.
The new Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk and his cabinet members took office on Wednesday after they were sworn in by the President Andrzej Duda, officially ending 8 years of nationalist populist rule in Poland. Tusk has pledged to restore Poland's position in the European Union.
Panie prezydencie, powiedzieć, że z niezwykłą radością przyjąłem gotowość do pełnej współpracy ze strony pana prezydenta. Każdy bez wyjątku, kto chce działać zgodnie ze słowami przysięgi, jaką dzisiaj tutaj składaliśmy, będzie naszym sojusznikiem, niezależnie od tego, skąd przychodzi, jaką funkcję sprawuje. Nie ma dla nas ważniejszej sprawy niż dobro ojczyzny i pomyślność naszych obywateli.
Tusk's government has challenges ahead. His cabinet must now prepare and approve a general budget in less than 2 weeks and implement important institutional reforms.
Uber drivers or Deliveroo delivery workers? Are they freelance or are they employees of these companies? An agreement between the EU institutions reached Wednesday in Brussels should help answer this question, as it seeks to regulate and improve the working conditions of platform workers. The deal fixes what the criteria are for them to be considered employees of the companies they work for.
Non ci possono essere falsi lavoratori autonomi in giro tra I rider, tra categorie di lavoro che sono tra le più sfruttate, tra le meno pagate, tra le più precarie. O sei un lavoratore autonomo vero, o sei un lavoratore dipendente, ti meriti quelle tutele sociali.
The agreement establishes 5 key indicators, which include whether the company fixes upper limits to the employee's remuneration, supervises their performance through an app, controls the distribution of their tasks, chooses their working hours, and makes them wear corporate clothing. If 2 of these criteria are fulfilled, then workers should be made employees and benefit from social rights, including paid holidays. For some MEPs, one of the difficulties has been dealing with the platform companies.
Les lobbies des plateformes, ils ont réussi à trouver des alliés au sein du Parlement, mais surtout au sein du Conseil de l'Union européenne, donc qui représente les États membres. Et donc, jusqu'au dernier moment, ils ont tout fait pour détricoter, pour saboter la directive. On est passé à 2 doigts, vous savez, d'avoir une directive qui soit pas favorable pour les travailleurs, mais qui soit une directive favorable pour les plateformes, qui soit une directive pro-Uber.
Representatives from the platforms have not replied to Euronews' request for comment, and according to data from the European Parliament, around 5.5 workers are now worryingly misclassified as freelance. The new law will also make algorithms more transparent and clarify for workers how they are used to allocate work, as well as how their personal data is treated.
A really powerful
British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has faced down rebels in his ruling Conservative Party to win a knife-edge parliamentary vote on his latest plans to send migrants to Rwanda.
The ayes to the right, 313. The noes to the left, 269.
The government says the scheme is designed to deter migrants from crossing the channel in small boats, something Sunak and his cabinet have made one of their key priorities.
The treaty that I signed last week puts beyond legal doubt the safety of Rwanda. It provides the basis to end the merry-go-round of legal challenges that have second-guessed the will of Parliament and frustrated this policy, this House, and the desire of the British people.
Sunak took to social media to say that the British people should decide who gets to come to their country, not criminal gangs or foreign courts. That, he says, is what this bill delivers. Meanwhile, an asylum seeker on board the Bibi Stockholm barge, which houses migrants off Britain's Dorset coast, is believed to have committed suicide. The 3-storey vessel houses people awaiting the outcome of their asylum applications and has the capacity to house up to 500 men.
The night train connecting Berlin to Brussels and Paris is running again for the first time in nearly a decade. The cooperation between the German, Austrian, French and Belgian train companies is paving the way for a more climate-friendly Europe.
Wir freuen uns, dass nach 9 Jahren es wieder einen Nachtzug nach Paris gibt. Dafür haben wir lange gekämpft als Back on Track. Und jetzt sind wir hier und können die Abfahrt des ersten Zuges begleiten.
The demand for the sleeper trains linking major European capitals has seen seats fully booked for weeks in advance.
Natürlich muss man auch beim Rollmaterial, gerade jetzt hier auf dieser neuen Relation, sehen, dass man hier in den nächsten Jahren dann auch modernere Züge bringt, um eben konkurrenzfähig zu sein zu anderen Anbietern. Und da ist man aber, denke ich, auch mit dem Nightjet der neuen Generation dann auf einem guten Weg.
Germany's Deutsche Bahn has suffered from a lack of investment, with Austrian railways far outstripping the quality of its trains.
It was a pleasant trip, so it's quite comfortable to not have to worry about catching the flights or something like that. And only disadvantage is they're slightly late occasionally, as it's today.
As demand for night services increases, train companies will be under pressure to invest in infrastructure if they want to attract more business customers.
Fall asleep in Berlin and wake up in Brussels. This year, sleeper trains are making a comeback. And with climate change dominating headlines, train companies are putting down tracks to connect European cities with one another. But will that be enough to make travelling more about the journey than the destination? Liv Stroud on the sleeper train for Euronews.